Hi, my name is Alicia Herring, and I am a kindergarten teacher at Hand in Hand in Thomas County. I would like to take a moment to go over some data that I have collected from GKIDS for the last 3 years in language arts and math and show you how Hand in Hand compares to the state and then how our students are performing at Hand in Hand on the GKIDS standards. The data shared with you today will be used to identify strong and weak areas of student achievement in GKIDS language arts and math assessments. This data can be used to develop an action plan with long-term and short-term goals, helping staff members focus on solutions for improvement of learner-centered problems. What do you think we will see with the data? Do you think our students are stronger in language arts or math? Let's go visual and find out. Looking at language arts overall with Hand in Hand compared to the state, in 2012 the state had more students meeting or exceeding than Hand in Hand. In 2013, Hand in Hand had 81.5% of students meeting or exceeding overall in language arts, and the state only had 76.7%. In 2013, again, Hand in Hand had 81.8%, and the state only had 77.2% meeting or exceeding overall. If we look at math as a whole, in 2012, the state had more students meeting or exceeding in math overall with 86.1%. Hand in Hand had 85.3%. In 2013, the state had 82.6%, and we again were short with 81.7%, or not as many as the state. And then in 2014, the state had 83.5% of students meeting or exceeding in math, and Hand in Hand had 84%. If we break language arts down into the standards and compare ourselves to the state with reading and writing, speaking and listening and language, in reading, this is just for 2014, but in reading, we had more students meeting or exceeding than the state. In writing, we had more students meeting or exceeding. In speaking and listening, we had more students meeting or exceeding. And in language, we had more students meeting or exceeding. So Hand in Hand was above the state in every standard, with our weakest area being writing overall. If we do the same thing with math and look at us compared to the state in 2014, for counting and cardinality, we were a little below the state, meeting or exceeding. For operations and algebraic thinking, we were a little below the state for meeting and exceeding. For numbers and operations, we were a little above the state with 77.4 meeting or exceeding. With measurement, we're a little above the state at 90.2. And with geometry, we are just a little above the state with 87.1. So we're close to the state in all areas in math, and then with the weakest overall area for Hand in Hand being the operations and algebraic thinking. If we break language arts down into the domains, we have language, speaking and listening, writing and reading. And now I'll just be looking at the Hand in Hand data. For 2012, in reading, we have steady increases. We had 79.7, and then in 2013 it went to 80.4, and then in 2014 81.6 students meeting or exceeding in the reading domain. And then for writing, we have again steady increases from 2012 to 2014. Speaking and listening, we have steady decreases. We were at 88.4 in 2012, and then 85.2, and then 83.8. And then in language, in 2011-12, it was different standards. We were at GPS, and so it didn't correlate, but for 2013, we were at 84.5. In 2014, we had a decrease to 83.4. And then you can see that even with the continued increase in scores in writing and reading, these are still the two weakest areas for Hand in Hand overall. Since the writing standards have changed in the past 3 years, we were going to look at the next lowest area overall, which is reading. Doing the same thing with math and breaking it down into two domains, we have geometry, measurement and data, numbers and operations in base 10, operations in algebraic thinking, counting, and cardinality. And again, this is just the hand-in-hand GKIDS data. In 2011 and 12, we were on GPS, so these standards we couldn't compare until starting in 2013. For counting and cardinality, we had an increase. For operations in algebraic thinking, we had an increase. For numbers and operations, we increased. Measurement and data, we went down a little bit. And then in geometry, we went down a little bit. If we take language arts and we break it down even further into the elements, 3 elements that we would look at in reading is emergent reader text, common high frequency words, and producing initial, medial, and final sounds. And you can see for the sounds that we had a steady gain from 2012 to 2014. For sight words, we had a steady gain, and for emergent reader text, we are gaining in our meeting and exceeds percentage of students, with our lowest overall one being the sight words at 65.7%. Doing the same thing with math and breaking it down into smaller elements, even though we had gains in the counting, when it's broken down by elements, counting to 100 by tens and ones, you can see that it is our lowest performing element in math at the 74.5. So that's the one that you will see in the next few slides. Otherwise, we had a gain in the representing the numbers. Then we had a decrease in 2013 to 2014 for the grouping of objects greater than, less than, or equal to, and we had a slight increase in addition and subtraction, and then we had a slight decrease with shapes. But again, these are still at 89.6 and 87.5. They're still higher than overall than our counting. So that's the one that we will see in just a minute. Taking enrollment into consideration when looking at this data, we can see that Hand in Hand has seen a steady increase in student enrollment over the last 3 years. From 2012 to 2013, we had a 12% increase in students, and from 2013 to 2014, we had an 11% increase in our student population. If we break the enrollment down by ethnicity, it shows a decrease in the white population from 2012 to 2014. We had a steady increase in our African American population from 2012 to 2014, a slight increase in our Latino population, and then our students with disabilities has shown a steady increase from 2012 to 2014. As our earlier weak areas were identified, sight words and language arts, and we take the enrollment into consideration with that, we can see that overall students made a gain from 2012 to 2014. But when we break it down by subgroups, as done in GKIDS, the white students show a steady increase. The African Americans are showing a steady increase, but our students with disabilities have shown a decrease from 2012 to 2014. Now, Latinos is not breaking down in the GKIDS subgroups information, so that's why you see these 3 subgroups. And then the same thing for math. Overall, we have seen an increase in the counting, but when we break it down into the subgroups, the whites experienced an increase from 72 to 77, 72.3 to 77.8. The African Americans had a larger gain, a 10% increase from 60.8 to 70.8. And then our students with disabilities again have shown a decrease in meeting or exceeding this element. So overall, some strengths for language arts is that we did make gains compared to the state. We are higher in most areas, and then we have made some gains even on the elements. Gains were made by the white subgroup in reading some CVC words, and gains were made by every subgroup in reading the sight words with the exception of our students with disabilities. And some overall weaknesses would be our sight words and emergent readers. Even though we're gaining, these are still some weak areas compared to the other standards in language arts for our hand-in-hand students. In math, some strengths, we had gains made by every subgroup, excluding the students with disabilities on representing the objects with a written numeral. The black students were the only subgroup that did not make gains in meets on this standard, and then all subgroups made gains in exceeding on counting to 100, even though, again, that's still a weak area for hand-in-hand overall. Some other weaknesses: the all subgroup decreased on determining whether a group is greater than in that grouping standard. The black subgroup made a slight increase in the meets on that. Every subgroup decreased in identifying 2D and 3D shapes. And then counting and adding and subtraction continues to be our weak areas overall for hand-in-hand students in math. So what does this mean for hand-in-hand teachers? How can we use this data to improve instruction for our students? First, we can build a foundation for looking at the data and learning the process I just overviewed for you in these slides, and then use it to establish a purpose for student instruction. We can take our data and identify students' strengths and weaknesses in all content areas. We can break down this data and identify student learning problems. We can verify the cause of the problems and don't just assume we know why increases or decreases are happening in the data. Then we can generate solutions to improve our data results. We can implement those solutions and monitor the results. And finally, we can see student achievement increasing at hand-in-hand primary school. Thank you.